Good evening, everyone. Welcome to you, our guests, in this scientific electronic lecture entitled Tafxi in the Vowels of Muslawi Qəltu and Baghdadi Gilit Dialects of Mesopotamian Arabic, held by the Department of English, College of Arts, University of Mosul, under the supervision of the Dean of the College of Arts, Dr. Muhammad Ali Muhammad, along with the department's head professor, Dr. Baqsm Yahya Jasm. Many thanks for all of them. My name is Huda Al-Hassani, a lecturer at the University of Mosul College of Arts, Department of English. It's my pleasure to be the moderator of this lecture. Now, let me introduce my colleague, Dr. Ibrahim Jaasim, the presenter for this lecture about her PhD dissertation at University of Newcastle, UK. Dr. Maha, however, is currently member of the staff at University of Mosul College of Arts, Department of English. She is a lecturer of phonetics, and her major interest is in phonetics and phonology. She also presented her work at a number of conferences in the UK, Europe, United States, and Australia, in addition of being a member of the British Association of Academic Phoneticians and a member of the Association of Laboratory Phonology since 2016. So nice to have you with us today, Dr. Maha. Yes, before I'll give the floor to Dr. Maha, I'd be so grateful if you switch off your mics during the presentation, and if you have any questions, you can ask at the end of the lecture. Best of luck to you, Dr. Maha, and I wish you all the joy with her lecture. Our guest. Thank you. The floor is yours, Dr. Maha.
Thank you so much, Ms. Huda, for this presentation. I appreciate it a lot. I'll start.
Dr. Maha,
yes, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Huda, for this wonderful presentation. I appreciate it a lot. Is my voice clear for everyone?
Yes,
hello?
it is quite clear.
Okay, okay, I'll start then. I just wanted to make sure. So I'll start presenting my work, which Ms. Huda has gave the title of it. It's Tafxi in the Vowels of Muslawi Qəltu and Baghdadi Gilit Dialects of Mesopotamian Arabic. So I'll start with giving an abstract for my work so that you can be familiar with the idea, the whole thing, and the overall picture of the thesis. So Tafxi defines a post-velar place of articulation under which it may subsume consonantal and vocalic place features for consonantal and vocalic elements that are the correlates of Tafxi. These correlates are specified in sounds which are called underlyingly mufakhama, heavy or dark sounds in auditory terms, and they are also called post-velars. I'm sorry, I can hear some noise in the background. So in the dialects of Arabic, including the Mesopotamian, sedentary Muslawi Qəltu, and Bedouin Baghdadi Gilit, which are the dialects under investigation in this research, the post-velars represent sounds with two locations for two manners of articulations, which are the pharyngeals, which include the a and ha, the uvulars, which include the q, kh, and gh, and the third group of sounds are called the pharyngalized coronals, which are also called called emphatics. So now we come to the main idea of the research, which is Tafxi in vowels. So Tafxi in vowels is driven by post-velar mufakhama sounds, and it is represented in vowels as lowering, retraction, centralization, or as rounding. And this rounding is being conditioned by the nature of articulatory feature in the trigger post-velar mufakhama sound. And it's also being conditioned by the presence of particular lexemes identified as secondary mufakhama. So In this research, it is found that the featural manifestations of Tafxi are presented both locally in CV co-articulation and in long domain as harmony in the following shapes. They are presented in vowels as backing and rounding in the EA vowels in Baghdadi Gilit of Bedouin origin, with a significant drop in F2 onset in a uvular and pharyngalized postvelar context. This is also conditioned by the presence of lexemes identified as secondary mufakhama, which I will highlight in my research. In the Qəltu dialect, Tafxi is featured as lowering in the A vowel, which is a dialect of sedentary origin, and the acoustic correlates of it were a significant rise in F1 onset in the uvular context, and there is the presence of a sedentary vowel feature known as imala, vowel fronting of U and centralization of E, which occur in domains that lowering or retraction should be present or occur in Gilit on the other hand. On the other hand, in the long E, A, U vowels, Tafxi is represented as lowering and centralization with significant lowering of E and U vowels in a uvular context in Muslawi Qəltu compared to A lowering and centralization in a pharyngeal and pharyngalized context in Gilit. And as we will see, Tafxi is also represented as a feature of harmony, which is introduced in non-local vowels and as U vowel coloring and A backing in Baghdadi Gilit when particular secondary mufakhama sounds are present in the phonological domain. So before moving, I'll give you just a linguistic background of the dialects of Iraq and how they emerged and how they are classified. So dialectally speaking, it is significantly difficult in a diverse ethnic and social population to divide the dialects of Mesopotamia, Iraq, the Qəltu and Gilit. So the distribution of Qəltu and Gilit have been delineated in broader terms as follows: Upper Iraq, Middle Iraq, and Lower Iraq. So Qəltu is spoken by non-Muslims, which are Christians and Jews, belongs to the Lower Iraq, and it's spoken by other religious communities, Muslims and non-Muslims in the upper regions. And the Gilit, on the other hand, is spoken by nomads, sedentarized nomads, and Bedouinized communal groups in Iraq. So in this sense, linguistically speaking now, it's difficult to, the classification, of Qəltu and Gilit as Bedouin versus sedentary are impressionistic notions rather than based on experimental investigations, and therefore further studies has to be done, like this study, which dealt with experimental approaches to identify the identity of the vowels of Qəltu and Gilit based on their linguistic background. So I move here and start presenting the linguistic, or let's say the linguistic features that are the characteristics of each of the dialects, Qəltu and Gilit. So here are some of the phonological and morphological features. Qəltu represents the old sedentary dialect that preserved many of the old Arabic phonological and morphological features, like the retention of the old Arabic first person singular morpheme tu, because Qəltu, as I said, the tu is from the first person singular morpheme tu. So, and the reflex ka of ka, which is qaf, versus ga, which is found in Gilit. So in Qəltu we have ka is preserved compared to which has been changed to ga in Gilit. The other morphological feature, it's the final stressed feminine forms of color adjectives like safa. We find this a, the end vowel represents the feminine form of color adjectives, beva, and similarly with soda. We have also the invariable suffix pronoun ki in the second person singular feminine, in like aqall ki, I tell you, and it has been presented by several scholars like Jastrow and Palva. The other morphological features is the ending in un in the imperfect verbs in words like yimlun and Qəltu has also preserved the velar stop k from the Old Arabic in can, and samak it stays as samak. As we will see, these sounds has shifted to different sounds in Gilit. I will highlight them shortly. And we have the Old Arabic r has shifted to the velar fricative r in Qəltu in words like ras, ghas, and there are several linguistic domains where r occur, and it has been highlighted also in this thesis thoroughly, and also based on some of the research that has been done by Dr. Marwan in our department, where I highlighted some of his work about the r in Qəltu. In some phonological descriptions, the velar r is identified as being closely similar to the French uvular trill r, which is found in a word like rouge, for example, in French. And Qəltu, unlike other Arabic varieties, has the phoneme p as part of its consonantal inventory, and the p was brought to the variety via loan words in words like pasha, from Persian and Kurdish, actually. So we have pacha, parda, and panchar, for example, also has been highlighted by Jastrow. Gilit, on the other hand, as I highlight here, it's of Bedouin origin compared to Qəltu, which is sedentary. So Gilit is the product of a later process of Bedouinization, and by Bedouinization we mean it's derived from the word Bedouin or Bedouins, and it refers to a group of people who identify themselves as nomadic, semi-nomadic, and sedentarized nomadic. So the basic sound or the main sound or the main linguistic features, sound features, are the k, g shifting. For example, we have a word like qalb or qalb in Muslawi Qəltu, for example. It becomes galub in Baghdadi Gilit, and we have the k, ch, ch. So it's frication and affrication. In words like kinna, it becomes chinna, and kano, it becomes chano. So it's affrication in they were. And the insertion of an epenthetic vowel after the first consonant cluster, and yudarbun, it becomes yudarbun. Yudarbun, it becomes, we have the epenthetic vowel is inserted in a 3 consonantal cluster. Also the change of the vowel a to e in open syllables, and in non-post-velar environments, we see that samak becomes simach. And it changes to u, which is u vowel coloring, and a word like basal, it becomes busal. Another important linguistic features, it's the existence of dark and heavy emphatic counterparts of some of the plain consonants. And these include the oral and nasal plosives, bm, the nasal n, the lateral, the rhotic, and the fricative f. If you see, you compare Gilit and Qəltu, we have in Gilit ab and in Qəltu ab, makan, makan, fat, fat, nasi, and nasi. I'm not the perfect one to produce this because it should be a person who typically speaks Qəltu or typically speaks Gilit, but let's highlight it with the transcription. So here, if we want to go and define first, I would like to define first emphatic, and we start here where the page. Emphatic here, it's a phoneme found in Semitic languages actually, and it's a phoneme with an underlying pharyngeal feature. So first of all, we have to know what emphatics and which sounds are included among the emphatics. So the so-called al-huruf al-mutbaqa in Arabic literature is also addressed as emphatic, heavy or thick, or they are also, sometimes they are called pharyngeals, though pharyngeals represent a different group of sounds, but in some accounts they call them pharyngeals for some reasons. So in the emphatic sound inventory in Arabic include what is known as the underlying emphatics, also called lower pharyngeals or secondary pharyngeals, and the surface emphatics as well. So the presence of a group of sounds as underlying emphatic is driven by their place of articulation. So the thing is that main characteristic, if this sound is an emphatic or no, is defined by having an underlying pharyngeal feature. So the other group of sounds that are included among the emphatics are called gutturals, and now we see why he highlighted the gutturals, because they include the sounds like the pharyngals, the uvulars, and also the laryngeals in some cases. And this also depends if they have the presence of the feature pharyngeal in them. So if I want to define pharyngeal before I move on with my slide, and I want to show you what pharyngeal is specified here. So the feature pharyngeal is defined as a consonantal pharynx constriction in the group of emphatics and is represented under a C-place feature and dominating a C-place node. So here I will take you back by what do I mean by a C-place feature and a C-place node, and we go to the feature theory and feature geometry and how they highlighted this feature. So as we all know, feature geometry is one of the plays a significant role in the phonological theories of speech production, and several scholars have identified different features for different locations and structures in the vocal tract. So feature theory contributes to the early stages of the representation of speech segments. And what I'm concerned here is how they highlighted the feature pharyngeal and how we can discuss it and show it in terms of its presence in the mufakhama sounds. So let me highlight here. Yes, this is an example of a feature geometry. So if you see, we have the root. This should be found in a feature geometry, and the place which identifies the place of articulation. Here it's the upper vocal tract, and here it is the lower vocal tract. Here where are most of the sounds are produced, represented. For example, we have the labials, let's say like b, m, or p as well, coronals like t, d, for example, and dorsals, we have like the uvular sounds. We have here the other area, which is called the lower vocal tract, and here we see two features. These are the two main features that represent the emphatic sounds. So RTR represents a retracted tongue root, which is an articulation that is involved in forming a constriction for the emphatics. And the constricted pharynx, that means the pharynx is constricted at some point. So that's why here the feature pharyngeal plays a significant role in representation of emphatics. So the possible articulatory and acoustic correlates of the feature pharyngeals, they might be ariepiglottal. So this is one highlight of how pharyngeals are represented. And in terms of vowel, the pharyngeal constriction causes vowels to become low or retracted, which is the result of an open vocal tract configuration and tongue root retraction, as I am showing here in the RTR feature. I would show you here. It's a bit taking time. So we see here uvulars, laryngeals, pharyngeals are called dorsal. So they are dorsals in place of articulation, and they have a secondary articulation, which is pharyngeal, whereas the pharyngeals here, they have the primary articulation as a pharyngeal. So we see the emphatics, they combine all these sounds under the feature pharyngeal, whether a pharyngeal is a primary articulation or a primary articulation like pharyngeals or a secondary articulation like it is a uvulars. In most cases, the dorsals, which are the uvulars, are also called gutturals, including the pharyngeals, as I highlighted a while ago. We also have the pharyngalized coronals. If we see here, the tesada is a coronal, while the tasada are coronals with a secondary pharyngeal articulation. That's how they are represented. And here we come to the secondary mufakhama sounds, which are found in Gilit. Because they have a secondary pharyngeal articulation, they are included among the emphatics in Gilit. That's why I highlighted a coronal as a primary articulation and a pharyngeal as a secondary articulation. Added to, we have the k and g in Gilit. They are underlinedly k, which is further back, and q, which is back as well. So we find that these two consonants, they are in Gilit underlinedly emphatics. Here we move to the a. Why it is considered as an emphatic as well? Because there is something like a laryngeal added to the pharyngeal, it becomes a stop, a fricative. And the gha and qeltu that we highlighted is also a dorsal because it's uvular and it has an RTR feature, or let's call it the pharyngeal feature. So I'm moving now to identifying how Tafxi is represented. So let's see. In the unified feature theory. So Tafxi in the unified feature theory has been, like, let's say, neglected because there was an auto-segmental framework where the underlying features presented. But later approaches, they utilize a unified set of features where C place feature and B place feature are derived from the root node, and that's how low and retracted vowels are represented. So also we can, in the unified feature theory, we can represent the CV interaction. So for example, let's say, giving you examples here. Emphasis, for emphasis, harmony, or tafkhim. So it is a phoneme with an underlying pharyngeal feature, which induces a featural change in the surface form of another segment. So that's how the feature pharyngeal moves from the consonant, which is the mufakhama, let's say, the emphatic, the guttural, and it moves to the vowel, and the vowel surfaces as either low, retracted, centralized, which contribute with several factors like the vowel quality, the phonological environment, and also the dialect background. Let's see here in vowels, as we see feature pharyngeal moving to the vowels, it becomes retracted or lowered. Let's an example from Gilit, gam, qam in qiltu, tasa, tasi, and masluq, masluq. So there's a difference in the vowel output in both varieties. We also have, there's a kind of labialization included in Gilit compared to Qeltu, which is this feature is not found in the emphatics in Qeltu, whereas it's found in Gilit. If we compare a word like yaqa in Qeltu, it becomes yoga. See, the vowel is rounded here. Safan, it becomes sufan, and suduq, suduk, or qafil, qafil. These were all based, then these, let's say, the transcription of previous scholars or the notions, impressionistic notions, these were highlighted and they were included and studied and analyzed acoustically so that we arrived at the following vowel types, or the vowel that is identified in the emphatic context. So there's also an important variations across the two varieties, Qeltu and Gilit, in terms of the articulatory nature of the sounds that count as post-feeder. As I said, there is the kha and kha in Gilit. For example, we found in Qeltu and Gilit, let's compare a word in Qeltu like khayif, it be khayif, and kham, kham, khiliq, khuluq, ghibn, and ghubun. So we see that the vowels in these contexts are actually different in both varieties because the nature of the articulatory nature of the sounds that count as postvelar is different. So kh and gh might be different in Qəltu. They might not have a pharyngeal constriction compared to kh and gh in Gilit. Added, the vowel quality in Gilit is further back because this is a Bedouin sound feature. Similarly, we have the ha and a as well. So we find differences like ayif, ayif, wasaltu, wasalit, and dayij, dayij. So we see how it affects the vowel in different way, further back in Gilit compared to Qəltu of sedentary origin. Moreover, the pre and post velar l are contrastive in Gilit, like khali, khali, and we have khal, khal, and ghala, for example, and ghala, precious one. In Qəltu, we have khal, al-mole, like the mole, and khal, the maternal uncle. So the contrastiveness of you find, and we have a front long a vowel and a back back long a vowel, so they are contrastive in Gilit, and in Qəltu actually they are contrastive, but yeah, in length. Another supporting piece of evidence for the variation found among the post-velars. So as I mentioned, we have the short a, back a, and the long back a are contrastive in the same environment in Qəltu. For example, khal, khal, am, whereas in Gilit, they are not contrastive in the post-velar. Is that in Qəltu they are contrastive in the post-velar environment? Exactly, sorry. And we have in Gilit, we have khal and khal, am and am. So the contrastiveness is found also in vowel length. I would like to let you listen to some of these, for example, some of the productions and how they are contrastive in Gilit in the same environment. We find a front long a. It's a back long a as well here. So in Qəltu as well. So you see, it's both, we have contrastiveness only in length, but not in vowel type. So they are both front, but rather long, short. So I have actually moving to the articulatory correlates of Tafxi and then the acoustic correlates to show you how these are presented in the thesis. So previous works on the Arabic dialects, including the Qəltu, have shown that vowels undergo dorsality. So what we mean by dorsality is that the tongue dorsum lowering and centralization occurs in uvular and emphatic context, and RTRness, tongue root retraction, occurs in a pharyngeal context. There's also a lip protrusion, which is labiality or labiodorsality in uvulars, and they are also called labiovelars and emphatic context. So Tafxi in the a vowel occurs as RTRness, so it's a retracted tongue root. So that's why we see further backing of a in a pharyngeal context compared to Tafxi is dorsal in EU vowels. So that means there's further lowering and centralization in the EU vowels in a uvular and emphatic context, and that's driven by the articulatory nature of the uvular and emphatic context, which is basically dominant by the dorsality. The acoustic correlates. It's on page 101, 2. Sorry. So the acoustic correlates of Tafxim are detected at both the consonant vowel transition. So that's what we call the start of the vowel. It's around 10% of the vowel. And the vowel steady state, which is the midpoint where the vowel is actually stable there, and we can identify the type of the vowel there. So it is reported that Tafxim is salient at the consonant vowel transition in E vowel compared to the vowel steady state. So E vowel in a kind, it blocks the Tafxim because it is a front and long vowel compared to the A, which allows Tafxim. As we see, Tafxim in A is detected at both consonant vowels transition and the steady state. So this indicates that Tafxim is more prominent in A compared to the E vowel. So let's go to what they arrived at in the research, because there are lots of things to talk about, but let's highlight it very shortly. The phonetic implication of Tafxim and vowel. In this study, the typology of Tafxim as an underlying articulatory element in the different post-reader has been determined in vowels as we said, lowering, backing, or rounding. However, the type of Tafxim a vowel undergoes is driven by the element of Tafxim, the phonological environment, and the dialect background. So as I highlighted in the abstract, its Tafxim is rather centralization in vowels in Muslawi Qəltu in a pharyngeal and a uvular and pharyngalized, compared to Tafxim is rather backing and rounding, which is enhanced by the dialect background of Bedouin origin, where labiality is added to it. We also have other page 267, which are the important. So what we arrived, the results of both the phonetic and phonological accounts of Tafxim suggest that Tafxim is determined co-articulatory in vowels as CV interaction, so in one form of lowering, and Tafxim as backing and rounding in Baghdadi Gilit is driven by the presence of secondary emphatics identified as secondary Mufakhama and dialects of Bedouin origin. However, the main important difference in Muslawi Qəltu of sedentary origin, Tafxim is only featured locally as lowering and retraction in the same phonological environment where Imala is present in long domain in two types of vowel harmony. So, and we identified also the elements of Tafxim. And if I highlight a bit what was the recruitment and how did the methodology work. So we recruited 20 participants, 10 from each variety. So Muslawi Qəltu speakers, and they are basically Baghdadi Gilit speakers. And they were given a stimuli, which is presented on a screen in a sound booth, soundproof room at Newcastle University, where all these words were presented to them, and they were producing it without the intention of knowing the purpose of the study. And the speech was analyzed acoustically, and then statistically, where the results were, we got the results of the following, and we arrived at our the following results we got with regards to Tafxim in the vowels of Qəltu and Gilit. So we used the Pratt script to extract the vowel formats at the vowel midpoint, and we performed the linear regression statistical analysis to identify the vowel types and the effect of each consonantal context on the vowels. So basically we have the dependent variables where F1, F2, F3 at the onset, and midpoint of the neighboring vowels, and the dependent variables were independent, were the vowel context, the phonological environment, and the dialect itself. So if I identify what I said about opaque environments to emphasize harmony, we identified opaque, that means it blocks. So for example, in Gilit, we have طيبة, طيبي in Qəltu. We don't find a kind of change in vowel quality because the long E, the long front E vowel blocks the Tafxi in a way. While the A vowel undergoes imala in Qəltu, we find in Gilit it goes with the process of backing, like in qaful, qafil, imala here, wasalit, and wasaltu. So the same. The consonantal context, sorry. So we find that the J blocks emphasis harmony, and for example, ajaj in Gilit, whereas it's ajaj, ajaj in Qəltu. I'll show you like with some, it's better to listen to it rather than I produce it myself. So this is a Muslawi speaker. So here, this is a Baghdadi speaker, and here we'll see. You can see this is a Baghdadi speaker. Here is imala is present, where occurs, whereas in Gilit there is no type of imala. Here we have, as I produce, Muslawi speaker, and here a Baghdadi one. And this similarly, where we said that imala, or sorry, the emphasis harmony was blocked with a long E vowel. See, you can't see a change in vowel quality here, E. Maybe it's a very slight change that it's only detected at the onset of the vowel rather than actually this has been segmented here for the whole vowel. So this shows the steady state of the vowel. We can, if we detect it at 10% of the vowel, you might see a slight change in vowel quality, but it doesn't show for the perceptual side. It won't be very clear. Here we have final imala in Gilit. Actually, this was types. Actually, it's all of these are highlighted in the thesis. You can have a look at it. There are loads of things there, but the time, I guess, it won't help to highlight every single detail of this. If we see it, you will find how the backing is. So this is about Muslawi and then Baghdadi. Here, this speaker has a kind of imala with A. So you find like Ghazal, it's more like the vowel quality has changed. And this has shown that he's not a pure Baghdadi speaker. Actually, when we talk to him later, we identify that he might have a kind of relating to the southern areas because they tend to do the A as E. Some of the findings, well, I have highlighted loads of findings. I might skip the screen and show you maybe in the thesis, the final step of it. So at least, so am I missing something? Here. If time allows, let me see. Yes. Where I show you some of the results. Actually, these were the results of F1, F2, all these details, but I want to show you the graphs where the F, all these are presented and one detail at least of. I'm sorry for the delay, but this should be in chapter 6. just one example would help. For example, here in the a and ha context, the a vowel, you find the blue ones are for the Qəltu, and the red ones are for the Gilit. So we see here how we specified that this is further back or further front. So this is part of the graphing that we have, where after the acoustic analysis, we came out with putting these into graphs and into several programs so that we can have a clear and very accurate identification of the vowel, to say that this vowel is, for example, goes back in a ha context, as you see the ha here, and further here it's more fronted for the other dialect. Similarly, it happened with E, with U, for every context. So this was only for the ha. Here we come for the qa. If you find the qafal, for example, in Gilit, or qafal in Qəltu, here you find more fronted realizations of Qəltu, whereas more back are realizations of Gilit. And let's, for example, show you other vowels where the differences. For example, you see the k here, k productions were occurring in words like waqt in Gilit, waqt. So they have, instead of waqt, and they have waqt. So these k, they made the e vowel very front. That's some of the details that we showed, we relied on in arriving at our results for the research. So I might stop here and see if any of you has questions. I'd be very happy to answer, and thanks a lot for listening to the lecture and the presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maha, for this valuable presentation. Actually, it has been so great to have you here with us today in this scientific gathering. God bless you. Wish you all the best in your future research and studies.
Very good job, Maha.
Oh, yes, Ms. Dunya. Yeah.
You did a good job. I like the way
you.
that you pronounced everything was nice and clear. I
Thank
always
you.
say that the person who teach phonetics or phonology should have a clear voice in English. You did a good job, girl.
Thank you. That's because of you all, actually. You were my lecturers, and I really appreciate, Ms. Dunya, how you give everyone, like, you know, thumbs up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maha. Dr. Maha, you did a wonderful job.
Thank you, Dr. Wafa. That's my
dear.
I appreciate
We are
it.
very proud of you. Congratulations for the PhD certificate.
Thank you, all my colleagues and whoever attended the meeting. I appreciate it.
Just one last word, Dr.
Yes,
Maha.
yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. We have recorded the lecture, and we are going to publish it on our YouTube channel. If any one of you would like to join our channel, you just write جامعة الموسومة كلية الآداب قسم اللغة الإنكليزية, and you will find our channel, and this lecture is going to be within this channel, inshallah. Congratulations again, Maha, for the PhD. We are very proud of you, inshallah. You have been always our sense of pride, my dear, since you were
very much. Your words mean a lot to me. Thank you, everyone. Your words mean a lot to me. I'm your student after all.
You are my colleague now. We are very proud of you. Thank you very
but
much.
I still feel like I'm your student. Dr. Bassem, Dr. Wafa, Ms. Dunya, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my dear.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Maha. Thank you very much, our colleague, our attendants. That was a wonderful night, actually. I wish you all the best, all of you. Good night and goodbye.
Thank you very much, Ms. Huda. Good night. Thank you. Thanks a lot.